an invasion down at Colorado National Speedway. This is our first time doing a 2-day event and also our first weekend in the new car. Unfortunately, the weekend wasn't as great as we had hoped. We started off with the car being severely loose throughout the day. You can even see in this clip during our very first practice session, we didn't even make it a full lap around the track before we spun around, and then spent the next minute or so trying to get the car started back up. And since we don't know anything about the FZs, we didn't realize you had to give a bit of gas to get it started again sometimes. So something that we learned throughout the weekend, but unfortunately we had one of the safety trucks come out and give us a push, so we were able to get around and roll in again and finish out our practice session. But yeah, we just continued to be loose throughout the entire weekend and couldn't really dial it in and track down our looseness very well. Keep in mind that we are running obviously the FZ for the first time, and we're also running the new AFCO shocks. Not sure if that's part of the issue, but we tried working on the car throughout the whole weekend and never really got it right. So we're gonna kind of go down, break it down after the weekend and see where we can improve, and hopefully next time we come out is a little bit better. Too hot on the practice charts, only topping out at a 19.3. Definitely quite a bit of improvements to be made. We are kind of creeping into our times that we were hitting with the 1250, so we're not super upset about it, but definitely wish that our practices had gone a little bit better. In qualifying, we did feel a little bit better, but our pickup points were just way off. We weren't picking up throttle early enough, and we were braking way too early, really, so unfortunately just couldn't get together a great lap and still battling the looseness throughout the session. So we ended up qualifying a 19.4 and a 19.5. Neither of those are our best times, but with what we're working with right now, we're pretty okay with how that outcome came out. So while I feel like this wasn't our best qualifying attempt that we've had, we did, like I mentioned before, score a 19.4. That put us 38th out of 46 cars that showed up and qualified, so it's not the end of the world. We're almost 10 spots better than the worst right now, but unfortunately that did put us in a pretty bad spot to start the dash, where the top 7 or top 8 advanced to the feature. Started us in 17th on the inside, obviously lined up here. One thing that kind of made me upset a little bit was that we're supposed to keep pace car speed or faster when lining up to take the green flag, and unfortunately the leaders just checked up quite a bit once we all were packed up, and I had nowhere to go but to go straight into the back of the 95's bumper. Definitely didn't mean to ram her in the back like that, but could have been worse, I guess. Our start was pretty okay. We tried to get to the outside as best we could because we knew that we just weren't consistent in our car right now and didn't really have the time to work on it in between qualifying and the dash. So we were just trying to stay up out of the way of everyone and make sure that everyone can race their race. Plus, we wanted to make sure we had a car for both nights. And then we saw in front of us a car kind of flip up on their side and head up towards the outside wall, which obviously yielded a caution for us and eventually had us come down the front stretch, and they displayed the red and we ended up stopping. So definitely not what you want to see on the first couple laps in a dash. service of our dash after we restarted was pretty okay. Definitely not the best of the night, but we were able to keep up with mostly everyone else around us, and everyone kind of checks up after a car goes off into the dirt. But for the most part, the only thing we managed to damage during this race was just our bumper at the very beginning. The rest of it was pretty smooth, and we were able to complete the rest of the laps. Dashes this past weekend were longer than they typically are. These ones were 17 laps and they're typically about 10. This is just to give more people a chance to kind of settle in and work their way up to the front, because it is considered a heat race, and the top however many finishers ended up moving on to the fast feature, or what they considered the A main, while we battled out to get our position for whichever main we would start. We did have a pretty good battle here with the 19. We were still fighting our looseness all day, and it continued to show here. So unfortunately, all of our corner exits were not as great because of that, but we were able to get onto the pedal pretty decently and pull away during the straights, because the Z09 outpowers the 1250, it seems. Especially after a handful of laps, the 1250 tends to get heat soaked and starts to lose a bit of its top end. So the FZ09 seems to be working okay for us right now. We're trying to track down the 75 here in front of us, but unfortunately we weren't able to make it happen just because we had no consistency in the car still. Just loose everywhere, unable to really set the power down. End up finishing 17th in the dash. Not good enough to move into the fast feature. That put us in the feature starting 15th right now with a handful of cars. Obviously there's a lot of work for us to do, so we just tried to settle in and see what we could do as quickly as we can. Now right off the bat, you can see that the leaders are fanning 3 wide going into turn 3, and unfortunately they couldn't keep it together and spun around, and we did end up getting caught up in this wreck and ended up hitting our right front wheel with the 48's right front wheel, since they were spun around in the middle of the track, and we just couldn't do anything other than what we did to avoid it. We tried to slow down as best as we could in turn, but we just couldn't get it stopped in time, and there's a pretty good lesson there to make sure that when you know you're gonna hit, go ahead and take your hands off the steering wheel, because these things, with the amount of force that they hit and move the steering wheel, will absolutely break your thumbs. Luckily for us, we let go just in time, and we had the track worker check our right front as we were spinning it around, and it seemed like everything was okay, so we ended up driving off. But unfortunately for us, that pretty much solidified our finish to the race, because our right front spindle arm that connects to the toe link ended up bending pretty severely and giving us about 2 inches of toe out right now. So we did end up pulling off and bringing that rod in quite a bit to try and at least give us some more toe in. We ended up getting about 3/4 toe out total after bringing that rod in completely. Like, there was no threads left. We were completely in as far as we could, and that was all we were able to get. So unfortunately at this point my GoPro did fill up fully, so I couldn't record any more from the end car, but we did end up making it back out on the track to make the rest of the laps, so we didn't score a DNF. Unfortunately for us, we were quite a bit of laps down. I think we only completed 17 total out of 25. You can see we're kind of in the mix a little bit right now, and it didn't take us long to realize that we probably shouldn't be in the position we're in right now because we are laps down, and it didn't make sense to be running in the racing line at all. So after a couple laps, we did kind of start lifting and move over to the outside to let a majority of these people by so that we're not holding them up. But unfortunately, it was a pretty rough end to our Saturday night. We had to get a new spindle rod so that we can get our car back out for Sunday to make it drive better. So it wasn't the end of the world. Car could have definitely been in worse shape, but overall it was a pretty okay night. We ended up getting the car back together pretty okay, and we were able to make it to Sunday. So we'll go ahead and end it up right here. Appreciate you guys watching. Hope to catch you in the next one.